so the reason that I needed y'all's photos as kind of since we are changing up a little bit, last minute deal on changing up our intro, I went ahead and just put one together real quick. So maybe you like it, maybe you don't. It's okay.
I'm nervous. Let's see.
I'm not nervous. I'm looking forward to this.
No, I'm sure it's awesome.
All right, y'all ready?
Do it.
3, 2, and 1.
All right. We're going to tell y'all a little bit about where we're from. Here we go.
That's awesome. I would watch that over and over again.
Yeah.
I really would.
Love it.
Yeah, do it again.
All right. Yeah. Maybe next week.
I don't know if I can wait till next week.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. All right, welcome everybody to another episode of Saints in the South, number 269. Good to be back. Good to be with you. How y'all doing?
Good.
Okay.
Nice.
Wonderful.
Doing all right.
Blessed.
Good stuff. We'll go ahead and let everybody know we are going to change things up here a little bit. So buckle up. We are going to put Come Follow Me on pause as an official podcast weekly deal. We'll still be sharing some Come Follow Me thoughts as shorts and individual thoughts and so forth. And I'm sure some Come Follow Me will sneak in as we have different gospel conversations. But we do want to, because we are limited on our recording time, everybody's busy as all get out. And so we just want the opportunity to discuss more items out there. And the gospel is always the foundation of what we talk about and discuss and come back to, and the lens that we look through as we have these conversations. So that's what we're going to start doing. Hopefully you stick around and enjoy it. And so any thoughts on that, y'all?
Excelente.
I just want to encourage anyone listening to this right now to give us some feedback. Let us know what you think.
Well, and like
we're
Jackson
still,
said,
we're still. I mean, like we've only been doing this for what, 5 years now, so we're still kind of getting our footing, still trying to figure out what we're doing.
That's right.
well, and like Jackson said too, we'll be posting different like shorts or individual videos about Come Follow Me during the week, and so you'll still get some of that.
That's right. That's right. Hey, and Kenny has been handling the editing of these episodes for the most part. So maybe Kenny can take the link from the lesson from a couple years ago. From
Share it on
and share it on Facebook, but maybe even include the link in the description of this episode if they wanted to go down there and click or what have you and stuff. So
that's a good idea. Yeah, I was already planning to share on Facebook, the lesson that would correspond from 4 years ago. As I mentioned before, I don't think it made it to the episode, but that's what the Fulmer brothers, scripture gems I talk about all the time. It's one, they're probably my favorite Come Follow Me podcast. And after they completed the 4-year cycle, rather than repeating it, what they've started doing is just sharing the episodes on Facebook. And so I think that's what we're going to try. I'm going to try to do right now is share those episodes on Facebook.
Like reshare? You mean reshare?
Yeah, reshare. It's not
doing anything new.
Yeah, if we're as long as we're not recording anything new with Come Follow Me, then I plan to share the old episode from the corresponding lesson.
Don't say old, say classic.
Classic, that's right.
What do you say?
I said don't say old, say classic.
That's right.
Version.
Kenny the professor.
It's like
we're saving the planet.
Classic. I'm gonna call it New Saints in the South, and everybody's gonna go boo, and then I'm gonna say it's actually Saints in the South Classic, and then everybody's gonna love it.
That's right. That's actually not about it. Saints in the South Classic.
I like it. I like it.
Retro.
Yeah. So we are about to have a discussion here on councils, church councils, family councils, executive councils, ward councils, and the significance and importance of them. Last week, we ourselves had a little council in determining and deciding on moving away from Come Follow Me a little bit. You can check that full unedited episode out at patreon.com/Saints in the South. So we had some pretty good discussions there. Some few different opinions, some pros and cons of the deal of everything. So check it out if you want to.
I'll do it. I'll check it out.
Check it out. You'll even hear Michael forget one of my children's names.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that, Braley. Braley House, she's probably one of my favorites, and because probably not because I tend to get her in trouble, but whenever I give a sacrament talk, I'll tend to ask questions during the talk, and Braley will be one of the first ones to respond, which gets her in trouble with her parents because her parents like, oh, but I love it as the speaker because I'm like, hey, at least someone is listening. I've got one person out there that's listening to my talk and responding. So shout out to you, Braley. Thank you. And she doesn't do fist pumps, but I'll put my hand out there and she'll bump it with her head. So
that's right. There you go.
That's right.
Thanks.
Hey, Braley's sharp too. I got to be her primary teacher for a while, and she's sharp, no doubt.
Definitely have to make sure she listens to this episode, right?
That's right, Braley. This is for you.
All righty. Yeah. Well, before we get started, let's check out some weekly wins here.
We're going to win so much, you may even get tired of winning. And you'll say, please, please, it's too much winning. We can't take it anymore.
All right. So this week, I decided to share a church win. Kenny, I really like what you posted on the Saints in the South group. So I'm going to share that. Thought it was pretty neat, especially in this day and time here.
Oh, yeah.
So, Kenny, tell us about this right here, okay?
Winning. Okay, so this is something that I found in another group, and so this infographic is really interesting because the church is really in the media right now, in the forefront. There's a lot of just different things, a lot of negativity. I know when I've been at the gym working out on the news, I've been seeing stuff about Lori Vallow every 5 minutes, and there's all these people online. Just there's so much negativity about the church, and it's just this and that and the other. But the thing is, the church is growing by leaps and bounds exponentially, and the little graphic right here shows this growth. The church is not failing. The church is not floundering. The church is not diminishing in any way. As a matter of fact, I think that the information on this graphic demonstrates exactly what Joseph Smith said about the work of God moving forward.
It's the standard of truth has been erected. No one hallowed hand can stop the work from progressing. Persecutions may rage, mobs may combine, armies may assemble, calamities may defame, but the truth of God will go forth boldly, nobly, and independently till the truth of God has penetrated every continent, swept every country, and sounded in every ear. And the purpose of God shall be accomplished. And the great Jehovah shall say, the work is done.
Boom. That's it. And that's what we're seeing right here. So I think this is a win. This is definitely a win. I feel like it's a universal win, even if you're not a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, even if you don't really like us or whatever. The thing is, the church is a force for good, a net good in the world. I think that's undebatable. If you look at what we as Latter-day Saints do throughout the world, what the church does as a corporate entity, as far as the billions and billions of dollars that they spend on humanitarian aid, and all of the millions of man hours that individual members of the church spend in service to others, I think it's undebatable that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is a net force for good in the world, whether you agree with our doctrine or not, or whether you like us or not. So I do think that this is not just a win for us, not something for us to brag about, but I think it is a win for the world as a whole, that goodness is moving forward.
Absolutely. Yep. And I think it's a good showing overall. And I want to say almost the kind of the comeback, but just the continual growth of Christianity all around, for sure.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing an uptick right now. It's very interesting, especially among young males.
That's right.
There's it's the counterculture now. That's what's interesting, is like the culture has become so corrupt that for you to be counter to the prevailing culture, you have to be conservative or be Christian, be something good, be wholesome. Being wholesome and honest is now considered like rebellious
rogue thing to do.
That is a rogue thing to do.
It is. It's
I
the rogue
love
thing
it.
to do. Yeah.
Speaking of rogue and cool things, our weekly win was we had seminary graduation a little early because we have so many students and families that right after they graduate from school, they go on trips and vacations and whatnot. So we had a little early, and we had our biggest turnout thus far. Over 149 people showed up for seminary graduation.
Nice.
We actually had a first. We ran out of chocolate chip pancakes and scrambled eggs. That's a first.
Wow. Nice.
It was awesome. It was awesome having that many people there. I really could have used Chase's help. I really could have.
Well, all right. Well, hey, let's jump into some counseling. Oh, Joe had something. I saw it.
saw a thought forming. Now I was going to say, I think I'd mentioned this book before. It's called Do Hard Things, and it was written by a couple of teenagers, and I've actually bought it for some young men and young women in previous wards because it actually, it's probably at least 10 years old, but it talks about that very thing about rebelling, about going counterculture or being rogue, or I think the way they put it was rebel against society's low expectations, because their thought was teenagers almost a negative connotation. Like there's nothing to be expected of them. They're a teenager. You can't trust them with anything. They can't do anything. They're a teenager. They're not helpful. They're not, you know what I mean? Like it's a pejorative to say, oh, they're a teenager. And so their message was, that's not the way it has to be. That's not the way it has been. They gave several examples throughout history, including George Washington and others. And they said, so that was their challenge to the youth today, is rebel against society's low expectations and show them that you can do hard things. And I thought it was a super cool message. And
Nice.
That's
pretty
cool.
interesting little book. Short read. It's a good read. So yeah, if you're thinking about something to get your kids to read, try that one.
Yeah, I might want to check that out myself. I like.
Yeah, what was it?
You know,
called?
the whole concept
hard
of
things.
the whole concept of adolescence, is a relatively new idea that hasn't existed throughout most of human history.
Yeah, they mentioned the word teenager is less than 100 years old, I think.
Yeah.
Because prior to that, it was not recognized as a thing. It was you're either a
most
kid or you're an
cultures-
adult.
Most cultures around the world, through most of human history, there's a certain point. For women, there's a biological point, so it's a little bit easier for women, because for women, once they reach that point where they're able to reproduce, they start experiencing the female monthly cycle and everything, then they're
All right, don't make it weird, Kenny.
Yeah,
I'll make it weird.
weird.
But for men, it's not so clear cut, right? So there's various rites of passage that different cultures have had throughout time, and a lot of them are really, really fascinating. There's
I think we need more of it.
that still exists. There's I can't remember where. There's an African tribe that their rite of passage consists of once a boy reaches a certain age, and he if he feels like he's a man, in order to prove his manhood, he has to build. And I'm sure y'all have probably heard of this. So he has to build a tower. And basically, the only materials they have to work with are
bungee jump
and twine.
And then bungee jump off.
Yeah,
of it,
and
right?
they bungee jump, but it's not a bungee cord. It's
Right, right.
literally it's literally
Vines.
vines that they have wound together themselves by hand.
Yeah.
And some of these towers are
National
really
Geographic
tall.
did a thing on that.
Yeah,
They did that.
and
That's
and
cool.
it takes, number one, it takes amazing just the ability to build something, to build the tower in the first place is impressive. Number two, to build the cord that they're going to be jumping from, that they're going to be attaching to their leg, is that requires skill. It requires, you have to have skill and confidence in your ability. And then the big part is actually jumping. And so they have to jump off this tower. They have to trust their own workmanship in the tower that they constructed and the rope that they wound together with these vines, that it's going to catch them and they're not going to hit the ground and splat. And there are some boys that get to that point and they're like, and they kind of chicken out. And in those cultures, it's like, hey, that's okay. You're just not ready yet, but when that boy wants to be respected as a man, that's what he has to do. You know, and I love stuff like that.
That's
I'm
cool.
glad I don't have to do that. Thanks.
So stay tuned next week when Kenny is going to build a tower, to string some vines together and leap to prove his manhood.
I'm too old for that nonsense. I'd rather be a kid.
Yeah, we used to do something similar growing up. You know, where you get let down. Yeah, it was group projects, and my friends would let me down all the time. That's how it went.
You really stretched for that one, Joe. I'm just saying.
Yeah, more than a bungee cord.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Let's jump into councils.
This week we want to talk about councils. There's and the information is readily out there and available for everyone. We went to Church News. It's titled Inside Church Headquarters, and there's actually 4 segments to this. The first one is what President Oaks and President Eyring have learned about revelation and councils. The second one is why the church is governed by councils. The third one is a look at 3 of the church's executive councils and what they do. And then the fourth one is 8 principles to help stake, board, and family councils be more effective. So I think the best place to start is 1. What do you think, fellas?
Sounds good.
Works for me.
All right. So the thing that, you know, and I think everybody should be able to, you know, say what stuck out for them. The thing that stuck out for me was when he said two things. First one was Elder Eyring, and he said he was watching the brethren discuss an item, and he said that he had thought that they had reached, after a lot of differences of opinion, a consensus was finally reached, he recalled. And the president of the church, who was in the chair, said, "I sense there's someone in the room who is not yet settled. We'll bring it back another time." And then President Eyring said, as they filed out of the room, he noticed one of the members of the Quorum of the 12 tell the president of the church, "Thank you." And President Eyring said, whether in a meeting with the Quorum of the 12 apostles, a stake presidency meeting, or even a family council, the great leader of a council is very sensitive to not try to force unanimity. Did I say that right, Joe?
You got it.
Or consensus, but wait until it actually happens. So that was cool. And then the other thing that jumped out to me was, let's see. He was talking, both President Eyring and President Oaks were talking about how they've served in different councils, and President Eyring specifically about how he served under 3 different presidents now. He said
they all operated very differently.
Yeah, he did. He said they all operated very differently, but he's I don't know, you guys keep talking. I'll try to find it. So what did you guys think about the first part?
I liked the consensus and unanimity without being so preachy about unity. It's almost like unity has become a slogan or a brand. Like it's the thing that people are aiming for. Like I don't know, it's like an ingredient or something. Does that make sense? Like you hear people say it, like unity is our not unity. It's what unity through diversity or something like that.
Yeah, diversity is our strength, maybe.
Yeah, and it's like, well, it works like that if you're unified, but it can't even be unity as in like a demand that's set forth that we have to be unified, or that we all are unified just as a given statement. It doesn't work like that. Like diversity is diversity, and unity is something that you grow into. I don't know. It's just, it doesn't fit the way the world's trying to do it.
Yeah, because they're trying to force it, which is exactly what President Eyring said here, that it's not something that's forced. Right. In fact, I think Elder Oaks at one point in this first one said something about if he was in a stake presidency meeting, and if the stake president was set, then they were trying to decide, where to build a stake center. And he said if the stake president would have said, "Hey, this is what the Lord revealed to me. This is where we need to put it. Will you guys support me?" Elder Oaks said, "Yeah, I would have supported him as a counselor in the stake presidency. I would have supported him, but it wouldn't. It would have been a different type of. I can't even quote him. Yeah, do you remember what he said?
He said the way he brought it up was, "What do you think about this location?" And then the first counselor was like, "I like it," and then he was like, "No, I don't think it's a good idea." Because
and he laid out his reasons. He said too. He said he had solid reasons why he felt like it was not a good idea.
But then later when he prayed about it, the answer was, get out of the way. I thought that was really interesting. The way the Lord, the inspiration of the Lord or the Holy Ghost spoke to him was, get out of the way. And so he said, no, I was wrong. Go ahead. And he said it's still there today. So
And the principle that he learned from that, what he says, the purpose of the council was to introduce a subject, and the subject was where to build the stake center, and to stimulate me to prayer. And with the benefit of revelation, I came in line.
Yes.
So, and so that's the key, I think, with diversity is a strength as long as you're unified in a bigger goal. So they talk about that later on with the first presidency, that like, for instance, Elder Oaks brings things from his legal perspective that the others hadn't considered.
Exactly.
But Elder Eyring brings things from his perspective that Elder Oaks has said, I never would have thought of that.
Yeah.
So that diversity does bring strength, but only because they're unified at a bigger goal. In humility, they're seeking through prayer the real inspiration. So rather than bringing their own individual piece as diversity and saying, this is my strength and I'm standing on this thing, and just resting there and saying diversity. No, it's that diversified viewpoint, unified in a bigger objective, a bigger goal. In humility, I think is key there, and prayerfully seeking inspiration. And that's what leads to consensus. That's what leads to true unity. And that's what leads us, again, it's that keeping the direction aligned, keeping things in order. I think
it goes back to the quote that Michael referenced a minute ago. I want to read it because this is really sums it up to me. Whether in a meeting with the quorum of the 12 apostles, a stake presidency meeting, or even a family council, the great leader of a council is very sensitive to that, not to try to force unanimity or consensus, but wait until it actually happens.
Yeah. In fact, I finally found that this is what President Oaks said. He said, had the stake president said something like, the Lord told me it should be in Naperville, will you sustain me? President Oaks said, I would have sustained him, but the process wasn't complete.
Right. And I think that's important too, because if your goal is to get it approved for that site, then you don't really want to bring it up for discussion, right? But if your goal is to go through the process for everyone to prayerfully consider and receive inspiration, then the counseling, the bringing it up for discussion and seeking prayer afterwards is important. But now, on the flip side, if the diversity of thought, the diversity of the people represented, if that is the key, if that is important, then no one walks away learning anything. Right. You bring your piece to the table. And then you don't go and say, well, maybe I'm wrong here.
Nope, you
don't prayerfully consider. Right. Exactly right.
Yeah. If our goal should not be to accomplish any specific thing other than seeking the will of God.
Right. Right.
And then I liked what Elder Eyring said. I finally found it. He said, when talking about the three different presidencies he served in, the three different presidents he served with, he said each did it a very different way. President Eyring said of how the presidents of the church organized the first presidency. But what they had in common was a feeling of tremendous regard for their counselors and seeking their views. And I think that is critical in any council, a family council. If you're the husband or if you're the wife, you can't be the one that rules with the iron fist. You have to have a tremendous regard for your spouse, for the other person there and their point of view. It's state councils, bishoprics, it's ward councils, state councils. You have to have a tremendous regard for everyone that's there and for everyone's opinion, and you have to make sure that everyone is able to voice their opinion.
Yep.
So let me ask you a question. I know we've all served in councils, in various councils.
I still serve in one with my wife.
Yeah.
It's awesome. I love it.
So what would be...
And sometimes she lets me preside. It's awesome.
So do y'all have an example of what you feel like was an ideal council situation, or maybe an example of a council that was not done correctly? in
I
your own
think-
experience?
I think there's a tremendous amount of councils that aren't done correctly. But what I wanted to focus on was a really cool council I had with my family when my kids were still somewhat little. We had a family council and we us all sat around and I wanted to make sure, and my wife wanted to make sure that we got everybody's opinion so everyone was able to give an opinion. And we were talking about Ramey's mom at the time and what we needed to do, or could we help her financially, because she was in, really dire straits, and it was about, maybe having her move in and live with us, or helping her out, or pay her bills, or taking over her bills or something, right? And I made the comment, I was like, well, it's really hard for Granny right now because she can't even afford to live. I know I said she can't even afford to breathe. That was the comment. And our youngest daughter at the time, we went around and everything. And our youngest daughter, I wasn't even expecting much from her. And I can't even remember how old she was, but she wasn't in school yet. And she said, well, I think that we really ought to help Granny because she needs to breathe. And if she doesn't breathe, then she's going to die. So we need to make sure we give money so that she can start breathing. And she had taken it literally, right? She had taken it literally that she thought that Grandma or Granny could not actually inhale and exhale, even though what I was using was a figure of speech. But I can't tell you how hard that comment hit me and how insightful that comment was. And I knew that comment came directly from the Lord. That was a beautiful example for me of one of the best family councils we've ever had. What about you guys?
Kenny, I can't think of any, and I don't know how many councils I've sat in, council meetings I've sat in over the years. I can't think of like a specific example to share, or a specific meeting that I was in. But I know that a lot of times, sometimes we may get almost distracted. It's easy to get off track, and we forget the purpose, right? We were talking about purpose earlier, the purpose of why we're actually there, and why we're there serving. I think sometimes in reading again, and I know there's 4 parts, and it's hard to only pull from this first one.
Oh, we're getting ready to jump to the second one, so it's
right.
okay.
Well, okay. So they and I can't remember which one it was, but I think it's Elder Bednar, and he talks about no one would ever kind of disregard the comment from a fellow prophet, seer, and revelator, right? They're not going to treat that lightly,
right?
Even if you're new, even if you're like the junior,
even if you're new, right? So my question is, and my thought was, well, when we're sitting in our ward councils, we're not prophets, seers, and revelators sitting in there, right? So we don't look at each other as prophets, seers, and revelators. Where I can see where he's coming from. I'm like, man, that's somebody that's been set apart as a prophet, seer, and revelator sitting over there, right? Even if it's his first day. So do I look across the room and do I see a Relief Society president, or do I see a hairdresser that works downtown? Right? Or do I look across the room and I see a ward mission leader, or do I see somebody that works at the railroad? How am I viewing that person at the time during that council? And I think, do we give them the benefit of the doubt in their preparation, in their time on their knees and praying and studying and thinking about these things? So that hit me. I've never thought about that. Am I, when someone's sharing their thoughts, how am I viewing them? That time. So
it's funny. It's funny that you say that, because when I think about, obviously I've been in lots of councils as elders quorum president, counseled with my counselors about the needs of various members of the ward and things like that. I've served on the stake high council, and I've served as ward clerk through multiple bishoprics. There's three different bishoprics that I've served as ward clerk, and one of them was Jackson. And it's funny, I'm gonna have to going to try not to blow up your ego too much, but honestly, I think there's been really, okay, first of all, let me preface by saying that there has been some really, really good councils in all 3 bishoprics I've served in have had some amazing councils, but some that have stuck out to me the most in when Jackson Howell was the bishop, one thing was, that you treated your executive secretary and clerk essentially as counselors. And part of it almost was that you as the bishop had the authority to bestow that on us. It's almost like the mantle was upon us as well, because you had the authority to give us the authority to receive revelation. And I actually think of several times, but there was one time in particular I remember where there was a certain calling in the ward that we were pondering and talked about so many different people and just couldn't come to it. And you actually had all of us, we actually knelt down in a circle in the bishop's office and prayed about who the Lord wants in this position, because we're not getting it. We're bouncing all over the place. We're naming off all kinds of people. We're naming off people that are already serving in callings, or people that are hardly active, or just anything. We just grasping at straws. And so we prayed about it, and you instructed all of your 2 counselors and your executive secretary and ward clerk to pray about it throughout the week. And when we came back the next Sunday, we all had the same name. And it was just, that stood out to me, because that was, I feel like, a perfect example of a council, of, like we're talking about, number one, you didn't just lay down the law and say, okay, here's what I think is going to happen, blah, blah, blah. You really, you took everybody else's thoughts into consideration, and you really thought about it, but then ultimately you brought it before the Lord, and that was the ultimate deciding factor. It was like, okay, we need to pray together as a bishopric in unity, and then we need to pray separately throughout the week, and then we need to reconvene next week and see what happens. And the Lord worked through that council, and I thought that was a beautiful thing. So that to me is a good example of a council operating correctly.
I think of one example. I wasn't in it. A family member was in a bishopric, and a bishopric member, things got heated, and there were, what did they say in this first article? There were not disagreements. They didn't use that heavy of a term. It was like differences of opinion or something like that. Anyway, this bishopric meeting had something much more severe than that, and a bishopric member took a swing at another bishopric member. So that would be an example of a not good council. I would say a good council, I don't have a specific one that comes to mind to share, but I would say the good councils I've been in have pretty consistently had a couple things. One is the Spirit was felt, and 2 is everyone, to the best of my knowledge, everyone walked away fulfilled, which usually means they felt they contributed and they felt they received. So something was given and something was received. So they felt recognized essentially as a contributing member of that council. I think those are 2 main components of a good council, when people feel that they're involved, that they're helping, that they're giving and receiving, and that they feel the Spirit. And it's really tough, because it doesn't just rest on the leader. It rests on everyone in that council. And when in the first article they mentioned that it takes time to reach that consensus, like you allow it to happen. That only happens when everyone's working to be humble and to seek that higher purpose, that higher goal, to subvert. It's a really interesting paradox, because on the one hand, you are recognizing everyone's individuality, their diversity, the things that they bring to the table as an individual. At the same time, you're dependent on those people subverting their individuality and diversity in seeking a higher purpose and inspiration. That's the magic mix. That's what allows consensus to happen. And if you don't have a council where everyone's all in on that, then that consensus is hard to reach, because someone's stuck with, defending their position or getting their way or winning or whatever. And then it breaks down. It hits log jams and then someone swings at somebody or something. I don't know. I guess.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and in the handbook, it says, it references different people's callings, and it references that your first calling is to the council. Your second calling is either Relief Society president, Elder Quorum president, bishop, whatever. But the first calling is the council. And I like where at the end of this first article, it says, we know that children of God are on different places on the covenant path. And that's part of the function of councils, to help people at different points on the covenant path. And then President Eyring says the strength of councils comes largely from the faith of the people who are in them. If they together feel that the Lord has something he wants done and don't know yet what it is, there's a chance that together with their faith, they can find out the Lord's will.
Bingo.
And then it moves into the second one. Do we have time for that, Jackson?
Yeah.
I love the second one. Why the church is governed by councils. You guys have already made some quotes from this one. It is full, to me, this one is just absolutely full of wisdom. Every time I read it, I learn something new.
Yeah, the second one had a lot more deep dives that I've not yet completed, that I want to go back and dig deeper into. But yeah, it's very good.
Yeah, well, I mean, it says that first starts out saying that, quoting the Pearl of Great Price, that the great grand council in heaven was the first council that we attended, right?
The OG council.
That's right.
So I thought that was cool how it tied that in, and what was the purpose of the council? He said, in this family council, Heavenly Father presided with love, encouraged free expression, and respected the gift of agency. During the ensuing creation of heaven and earth, as instructions were delegated and signs were reported on, Heavenly Father, indeed Jesus Christ, demonstrated a divine pattern for counseling in councils. Counseling in councils.
Counseling in councils.
Yeah. So reading through this one made me think about council, a council as a form of government. How does that differ from other forms of government? Like it clearly is used as a way of, and I think that's what they quoted maybe near the end of taking us from where we are now to where we need to be. And the council is the process and the organization to make that happen. That sounds like a government. So it's interesting that I don't know of any government that operates on a council per se. And what are the differences between, say, elected representatives versus a council, Or
even, I think they also referenced a board meeting versus a council.
Correct,
Yeah.
Apparently I think our government was initially was set up to be that way, but some of the founding fathers were very much against political parties, and we see now for good reason, because right now we have two prevailing political parties that control all the power and prevent any third parties from making any kind of headway. And most of the time, instead of the Senate and the House of Representatives counseling together like they were initially, it was initially designed to do, they all tend to vote directly down party lines. And so it really doesn't, there's no actual counseling going on. It's basically whoever has the most seats is going to win. And it's just a contest,
I think
it's kind of devolved into that.
Part of the challenge with governing is power, because if you're directing things, that involves power. And I think our founders were very inspired and very astute of the human condition, of the natural man, of what happens with power. And so rightly so, they set up checks and balances and balanced out the government to basically contain as best they could the power vested in these different pieces of government, the different people that would hold these positions. So restrain them as much as you can so they can't cause much damage. Whereas I think councils are dependent on people chosen by inspiration rather than votes, which I think is key. Again, it gets back to humility. And then two, is they are working with that common goal in mind to not seek their will, not seek their popularity, not seek their power, not seek those things, but to seek a consensus in what the Lord would want done. And I think that is really profound, because again, it puts them in a position of humility. It puts each person checking their own natural man, rather than putting hard constraints on a government function. It's putting constraints on their own heart, as a council type of a governing
You know
body.
who exemplified that, in my opinion? We're talking about the founding fathers. The father of our country, George Washington, exemplified that. If you've never read George Washington's farewell address, I highly recommend it. We tend to think today that, oh, those guys that lived 300 years ago, there's no way they could have anticipated the kind of things that we have to deal with today. You know, the whole world is a different place. If you read George Washington's farewell address, there's nothing in our culture today that he doesn't address in some way. Like, I mean, obviously, you know, he wasn't prophetic. He doesn't talk about cell phones or technology, but as far as the moral and ethical issues that we face today, man, it's mind blowing how inspired he was. And I do believe George Washington was inspired, was very much divinely inspired. He sought God's will, and he had the humility, like you said, Joe, to not want to be the top dog. You know what I mean? He was kind of thrust into that position, and there was a lot of people that wanted him to be king, because that's where they came from. You know, that's how the whole world had operated up to that point. You know, every country had a king. And so they're like, okay, we need a king. George Washington will be a great king. He should be our king. Washington was like, no, you don't understand. That's what we're getting away from. We're doing something completely different here.
It's funny you bring him up. He was on my mind earlier because of councils. He very, very famously early in his career in the Virginia militia, I guess it was, he was serving under, I think it was Braddock was his name. He was a British commander general. I don't know the ranks, in the French and Indian War. And Washington, who was born and raised here, was trying to tell him, like, that, you know, they don't fight here like they fight over there in Europe. This is different here. You should listen. You know, there's more like guerrilla warfare type tactics and stuff like that. And Braddock was not having it. You know, you're just a colonial. You know, what do you know? And Braddock died in that campaign because he wouldn't listen. And Washington ended up taking control and organized a retreat and stuff, and they regrouped. But he had taken those lessons with him reportedly through his life of listening to his counsels. Whether you were a common person, an educated person, a person of nobility, he would listen to you, and then kind of take that counsel. And that's I think an interesting note for him.
Ballard's was pretty successful in a lot of different companies that he ran. And he said they ran because of the expertise and good work of other good people. And he said the council system is the way you move things safely and solidly from where it is to where it needs to be. And then I love this, what Bednar says. Any one individual can make a mistake. We all make mistakes. And we have never claimed that the leaders of the church are infallible. The council system is a spiritual safety rail. Did I cut you off, Jackson? Were you going to say something? I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. Just kind of going along with that. The idea that a council, and it says it in part 4, but it says seek consensus.
Bring it up.
Seek consensus through revelation, not compromise.
Right.
We talked about seeking consensus already, and when I saw that, what come to mind was that council is not a negotiation room, right? Or a negotiation board. You know, so I'm not trying to get what I want, and you're trying to get what you want. We are working as one, trying to seek God's will or the best outcome of a situation. What I envision is if a council is operating as one, it's essentially one individual having multiple conversations in their head. I have multiple conversations in my head all the time, right? I'm trying to figure out what's the best route to do here, to do there. And that's essentially what a council is doing, is that they're one body working towards, hopefully, the end goal, the common purpose, God's will.
Yeah.
Right.
You got a lot of voices in your head, Jackson?
I got a lot of them. Absolutely.
I could get you a bed at the CSU if you need it.
Well, when President Oaks was talking about the process, he said the process, if you let the Spirit guide, and if you go into it with the mindset that, you know, that someone else might have something from the Lord that I don't have yet,
Right.
he says the process ends in unity, and unity comes from the Lord.
Yeah.
Jackson, did I cut you off again? Okay.
I
Joe,
love.
did I cut you off? I'm sorry.
No. You got me started. I love it. Yeah. I think it was this one where Oaks had mentioned that he had served with President Nelson for like 30 some odd years.
34 years.
Yeah, but when he became the president, his decision making process was very different.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really cool to hear that. I mean, think about someone that you've been close with and worked with for 30 plus years, and then you see a complete shift in how they do things. That's powerful, you know.
Yeah. One thing that I definitely learned as a bishop, and they mentioned this, and I don't remember if it's in part 3 or part 4, but if you're the presiding person at a council, right? So bishop would be the presiding person there. And this is what I learned as a bishop: if you speak first, you've killed it. You're done. You might as well end the council and have a prayer, because no one else is going to challenge that, right? No one else is going to give their opinion, because they're going to be like, well, I mean, I don't know how my opinion is going to be different. The bishop's already said what he thinks, or the stake president's already said. So what I learned as a bishop is that I missed something.
Oh, I was just joking. I said I would, just because.
Kenny would.
Contrarian.
And that's what we love about you, Kenny. So what I learned was I need to shut up. I need to be quiet. I need to let everyone else speak and let revelation happen. And I will tell you this. I can't even count how many times I thought I knew the answer as bishop going into a council meeting, letting my council members talk about it and let revelation happen, and realizing I thought I had the answer, but I did not. And we tried something else, and it worked. That's exactly what the Lord wanted to happen. In fact, someone made mention here in this article that had happened, that happens a lot in councils, is that you may come into a council with these different ideas or things or what you think that the direction it should come, and then through the council it becomes a whole nother creature, right? A whole nother, and something that nobody had ever thought of comes up, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is the direction that I think the Lord wants us to go. So I learned that as bishop, to be quiet, and I learned that I'm not always right. And there's another reference in here.
You learned that through marriage. You have to be bishop for that one.
Well, I learned that and they mentioned this. I learned that the Lord divides revelation up into pieces among the different council members. And I can't wait till we talk about that one. And that revelation is not given to one person in a council. It's given to everybody, and everybody's going to have a piece of it. So if you don't let the process happen, if you don't let others speak and give their opinions, if you don't let it come to if you don't let it happen the way the Lord intends for it to happen, you will miss it. You will miss it, because there'll be a vital revelation that's not given, that's given but won't be spoken of because you've shut it down. I love it.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily think that the Lord is given a bit, to, if we're talking about a war council, a little bit to the primary, a little bit to the Relief Society, a little bit to the bishop, a little bit to first counselor, a little bit to ward mission leader. What I see it as is, and this is why all the voices matter, is because all of their life experiences are different, right? And their perspectives are different, and information leads to revelation. And so because of all those many experiences that individuals have had and are having, and with with humble heart and seeking and wanting to know the Lord's will, that's where that comes from. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, definitely. You have to be humble and teachable. In my new position at work now, I facilitate groups daily, sometimes multiple groups in a day. And there's a story that I have shared. Gosh, I couldn't tell you how many times, but something that I heard years ago that stuck out with, just burned in my brain forever. It's my Jimi Hendrix story. So y'all knew who Jimi Hendrix was, right?
I don't watch soccer.
Joe, if I could smack you through the screen right now. Oh, so I saw an interview one time.
He's a veteran, a left-handed guitar player, right?
Yeah, I saw an interview with Jimi Hendrix. It was shortly before he died, when he was at the peak of his career, where he was widely regarded by many people to be the greatest guitar player on the planet. There were a lot of people that if you ask them who's the best guitar player alive, they would say Jimi Hendrix, because that dude makes a guitar do things that nobody ever even knew a guitar could do before. He's gifted beyond anything that anybody had ever seen. Jimi Hendrix in this interview said two things that really, really stuck out to me. Number one, he said he never, ever passed up an opportunity to watch another person play guitar. Mm-hmm. It didn't matter. And, he lived in England. It didn't matter if he was watching Led Zeppelin play at Wembley Stadium, or if he was watching some teenage kids who had just been playing for 6 months at a little club down the street. If he had an opportunity to watch a band, he took it every chance he got. The second thing he said is what really blew my mind. This is coming from Jimi Hendrix. This is coming from someone who is at the peak of their art. Someone who has achieved, who is widely regarded to be the best there is on the planet. Jimi Hendrix said, out of all the guitar players he's had ever seen in his entire life, he said he never once, without exception, there was not one single person that he ever watched play guitar that he did not learn something from. But that's kind of how I approach groups, how I approach councils, or try to, is to be humble and teachable, really listen to others. And if you are in that state of mind, then you're going to be able to learn from others, just like you were saying, Jackson, because everybody has different experiences. And so to me, that's what it's all about.
Absolutely. I'll share this thought here, and I'd say we'll bring this one, maybe a part one, to a close, and then we can do a part two next week, as I would like to get into a little bit more about family councils and everything. And
before you share that, so that you're the last voice in this council that we've just had, I'll bring this up. I'll bring this up from Elder Bednar.
Okay.
Revelation is scattered among the various members of a council. As an issue comes forward for consideration, we invite and hear counsel from everyone. So that's where I got the revelation is scattered among the various members of a council.
I'm thinking I may need to share this experience on part two, because the topic is actually brought up on part two. So I'm actually going to save it.
Got a little bit of a cliffhanger.
I hope I didn't blow it for you there.
No. I'm glad you did, because I'm glad you kind of interrupted me, because again, what I'm going to share really comes up in the next couple ones that we talk about. So
dun dun dun.
Yeah, little cliffhanger. Yep.
No, I think that quote that you shared there, Michael, it goes exactly what I kind of was thinking earlier, with being, when you leave a council feeling fulfilled. Because you were able to play a role, not because you did anything great, but because you were humble, as Kenny said, and you were teachable, which paradoxically allows you to share something useful. It's because you're being inspired. You're receiving guidance from the Holy Ghost, or the Holy Ghost is bringing something to your remembrance that only you would have that experience or knowledge of, that is helpful for the whole council. So that's the beautiful thing about it, and it's. You can't reverse engineer it like the world tries to do with diversity and rubber stamped unity. It doesn't work like that. It requires humility and faith and subverting yourself to something bigger, and keeping it all aligned and oriented properly. And what a beautiful thing that we get to take part of. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yep. Not trying to prove yourself right. not trying to prove that you have the best idea in the room.
Well, that's where you're wrong, Jackson.
That's your that's your ego. That's your ego talking right there. Whenever you
Right.
when you're
and that doesn't matter whether you're a council member or you're the one presiding. We all need to be humble. We all need to make sure that we're not trying to prove our point, but we do need to be cognizant and allow everyone to have a voice and everyone to feel fulfilled that they were able to express their view.
Mhm.
And we can express our view in a humble way, and we can also express our view, angrily. Fist fights. Yeah, we don't need that.
Yeah. That's right.
very good. Well, y'all be sure and check out next week's part 2 podcast on councils and the importance of them. So until next time, y'all keep on striving.
From the south. Come on.
Take it away, Jimi Hendrix.
That's right. Yep. Yeah.